Our campus community is blessed with so many amazing people who embody BYU-Idaho's mission to develop disciples of Jesus Christ who are leaders in their homes, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and in their communities. We want to introduce you to some of them and let you hear their stories. This is the BYU-Idaho Disciple Journeys podcast. I'm Isabella Salazar. My interview today is with Matthew Maroon, and this is Matthew's journey. I'm here with Matthew Maroon. He is the marketing department chair at BYU-Idaho. So first, Brother Maroon, I want to start from the beginning. So I understand growing up, your father was not a member of the church and your mother was not active.
Right.
What was that like for you, being in and out of the church for a bit?
Sure. Yeah. So, kind of my upbringing was a little unique, I guess, to maybe your typical LDS background or whatever. My mom was taught by missionaries, and she was baptized when she was a little girl, so she's first generation. She knew enough about the church that when kids were born that they would get blessings. And so I'm the oldest in my family. When I was born, she knew enough to kind of, go to church so I can get a baby blessing. So I did get a baby blessing. She knew enough that when members of the church turned 8, that they were eligible for baptism. And so I actually took the missionary discussions as an 8-year-old and went to church the 2 times that were required or whatever it was, and then was baptized when I was 8. But then we were kind of, not really involved in church until one of my younger sisters got baptized. We would go for the 2 weeks for them to go get baptized, and then we wouldn't go. And this happened off and on for several years. But I think the big thing for me is when I was taking the missionary discussions, they had taught me just the power of prayer. And they said that, you should be praying every day. And so I remember, even though I wasn't going to church, I still said my nightly prayers. And that was something that was, important to me. And it was kind of funny because I would, have sleepovers with my friends. And my friends, they knew I would always have to say my prayer before, we went to bed. So that was just kind of a thing. And I think that really kind of helped me early on, even though I didn't really know why I was doing it at the time, but it did help me kind of build a relationship with God. And that was something that, has just been invaluable throughout all my life. And I was lucky to kind of have that foundation early on, even though we weren't going to church. My parents were, they weren't living any sort of standards other than their marriage vows, kind of a thing. So I had a lot of fun things kind of going on in my life early on, but I was building that relationship with God.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool. So what made you want to be more active in the church? Yeah.
So it was kind of funny. I was 15 years old, and so I was my sophomore year of high school. And at the time, a lot of my friends who I was hanging out with, they were all right dudes. I played sports, and so they were just kind of like your typical bros, I guess. I don't know. We had a lot of fun growing up, but at that time, they were kind of starting to get into stuff that I just wasn't really into, kind of doing things that I wasn't really into, and I kind of just felt like I needed new friends. And so because I was saying my prayers, I remember praying one night, kind of cutting a deal with God. I was like, God, will you give me new friends if I go back to church? Was kind of my deal, and I don't know that you're supposed to do that, but in my scenario, I think it worked okay. And clearly, I felt like, yeah, you need to go back to church. And so this was probably fall, my sophomore year, and so I told my mom about it, who again was a member but just was less active, and I was like, Mom, I think I'm kind of thinking about going back to church. I don't know, I think it would be good for me to get new friends or whatever. And she was really supportive. And she's like, you know what, I'll go with you. And so we made a New Year's resolution. And that January, we started going back to church just kind of organically, I guess. And then eventually my younger sister started coming. And then it turned out for several years, my mom, myself, and my younger sisters were pretty active in church throughout most of my high school years.
Yeah. Wow. That's really cool how you kind of brought them back into it.
Yeah. I mean, it's it's God, right? Like it's just
Right.
kind of like I don't know. I think my mom had kind of been, I think he was working on her as well, and everything else. But yeah, it was kind of a fun experience, I guess, in that regard.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. So then after that, what led to you wanting to serve a mission?
Yeah, maybe a little bit of peer pressure. Because of my family situation, we didn't have any sort of legacy, any other, missionaries in our family, in our immediate family or beyond. I was lucky. We started going back to church. I found what I wanted, and that was new friends. We all got along really well. We liked the same things. We liked sports. We liked video games. We liked, to flirt with girls or whatever the case was. And I was very fortunate because I had kind of like that group of people who I really connected with. And naturally, when they started going on missions, I was like, okay, I guess that's what I do now, right? I'm gonna go on a mission now. And so some of it was, just kind of their example, and a lot of it too was I had felt very blessed and fortunate even at a young age, kind of seeing, where those prior friends were kind of ending up and kind of the trajectory I was on. I kind of felt like, man, I kind of dodged a bullet maybe in some ways, and felt very fortunate and wanted to honor that relationship that I had made with God and serve Him and serve, His children and kind of do that next step that I thought was appropriate at that time.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Yeah, that says a lot about the people you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
It can totally change the trajectory of your life, I think.
It really does. And, it's interesting because like I have the sister who's just after me, she's 4 years younger. And, you would think that we would have similar experiences coming to church kind of around the same, or going back to church around the same time. And it was just different for her. She wasn't able to really find friends kind of in her age range, or at least people who she connected with. There were girls her age, but just no one who she really connected with. And she had a much different experience and ended up leaving, the church in high school. So it's kind of, we had opposite experiences where I kind of came back to church in high school and she left. And I really do attribute a lot of that to just the situation and maybe some of the people who we had around us who we knew we were connected to.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's interesting. So, okay, you decided to serve a mission and you went to Honduras.
I did.
Can you tell me a bit about that? Like, what were some key moments that stuck with you?
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to go to a place I had no idea even was on the map before I got my mission call, and so I had that quintessential kind of experience of all of a sudden being thrusted into a third world country without very little context of what I was getting myself into. I absolutely loved it. I loved having that opportunity to kind of go out and obviously, kind of strengthen my own testimony and kind of, be a servant. I remember though thinking, and I know lots of missionaries kind of have this experience. Like I went out just thinking I was going to change the lives of so many people, and I was going to be the greatest thing in these people's lives that they could ever, dream of or whatever. And quickly realized that, I was the one that needed the changing, and just based off of their faithfulness and example, Honduras, I was in the MTC when a big hurricane went through, Hurricane Mitch, which killed about 10,000 people in the area in Central America. Wow. And so I came in right on the heels of that. And they were very humble and very, it was just a kind of a rough situation, but their example of faith and of gratitude and all these things, despite having just gone through this massive hurricane, despite having very little to begin with and having a lot of that taken away, I was just floored by the faithfulness and the goodness of just their attitudes and kind of who they were and who they are. And so that was pretty impactful for, that 19, 20-year-old kid trying to change the world or whatever, where I was the one that was definitely changed.
Yeah, it's so cool. I think that's a common experience. You go, you're like, I'm going to teach them. They're going to learn so much from me. Right. And then the opposite happens.
Yeah. Yeah, it was something that, even despite all of my own kind of what I believed it was going to be. It was such a big thing for me, and just gaining confidence. Learning another language was never anything I thought I would have the capacity to do. And even while I was out there, I was like, this is just not going to happen. Like I don't know, how I'm going to do this, but seeing kind of those tender mercies and seeing kind of like, the blessings that come from whatever, working hard and a lot of prayer and everything else. Once I got it, it was just a huge confidence builder for me, and kind of what my capacity was, and the things that I could do that maybe I didn't believe I could.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. That's so cool. So now, can you tell me a bit about your time as a student at BYU-Idaho? I understand that you went a little bit before your mission and then came back. Can you just tell me what it was like here?
Yeah, so my freshman year, it was Rick's College. This is summer of '97, and had a great experience my first year. And when I was on my mission, they announced that it was going to change to BYU-Idaho. It was going to be a 4-year school. And so when I came back, I think it was probably winter semester of 2001. Yeah. Everything was kind of in the process of changing. And so with a lot of those changes came a lot of what have become many of the foundational addresses. So it was President Bednar, who was the university president at the time. And I was kind of in the room when Elder Eyring was there, kind of giving a steady upward course over in the Hart Gymnasium. I remember just feeling just powerfully like how important, I guess, I was and we were as students, and what we had to offer the world. It was the first time I'd ever heard anybody, heard an apostle say, like, and I prophesy, and I was just like, wait, what? Like, you can do that? Like, I know you can do it, but like, you're doing it? Like, It's happening? And so that was just very impactful. I was here when they dedicated the Hinckley building, and it was President Hinckley who was here doing that dedication. And so I just kind of had this foundation of purpose, I guess, and really kind of having an idea of what my purpose was as a student, still not knowing where I was going or what I would do, but knowing that I had more to do than what I was, just kind of doing in my classes or whatever. And that really kind of just helped inspire me to feel like there was something more that I had to offer, and again, kind of just building my own testimony and my own kind of confidence, kind of incrementally. BYU-Idaho was a big part in that.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and the prophecy is just so cool. Now, correct me if I'm remembering it wrong, but essentially that BYU-Idaho graduates would become legendary.
Yeah, that's the word, right? Like I probably couldn't remember very much from the talk afterward, but there was that word legendary that always stood out to me. And after BYU-Idaho, I had this incredible opportunity to move to New York City for my first job, which again was never on my radar, never had any ambition to land out there, but had the opportunity and kind of moved forward with it. And I remember just kind of thinking, okay, this is what legendary looks like, right? I'm starting my legendary path, right? Not really knowing kind of the context of maybe some of the other things that Elder Eyring had said, but knowing that there was a greater purpose there, and that I was fulfilling that was pretty powerful.
Yeah. What was that like when you went to New York City and you're starting to see some the prophecy, I guess, kind of come to pass?
Yeah. I mean, it was incredible. I was not that ambitious student who kind of had everything figured out and kind of knew where they wanted to go. And so when I arrived in New York, I kind of felt kind of like a fake, because all these other people who, I was meeting in my singles ward, that was their lifelong dream, was to live in New York, to work on Wall Street, to perform on Broadway, to get into Juilliard and be taking classes there. And I was just kind of felt like a kid still who'd kind of stumbled into it, and but was just loving every opportunity that I had. And I think that helped me to kind of just maybe have some perspective of like, man, don't waste this opportunity. Like it's such a blessing and such an opportunity. Like I kind of felt in a weird way, kind of like a pioneer. I was one of the first, I think I was the first communications student, maybe the second or third business or kind of student from the business college or the College of Business and Communications to kind of go to New York City. And so I felt kind of a little pressure there to kind of perform and to represent. But it was all good stuff that really kind of just helped me remind me of that greater purpose and what I was doing and fulfilling that prophecy and fulfilling the opportunities for what the Lord saw in me that maybe I didn't see in myself.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. So what exactly were you doing there? Like, what was your job?
Yeah, so I started as an intern for the Nielsen company. They do the TV ratings, and so if you've ever heard like this many people tuned into the Super Bowl, they're the group that kind of measures that. So started as kind of an intern, moved into a full-time role as like a data analyst, which was kind of funny because I had no background in data or statistics or anything, but just kind of had faith that I could figure it out, and if that's what the Lord wanted me to do, then He's going to help me figure it out or whatever. And so, so I was at Nielsen for almost 7 years, moving kind of within a few different roles in account management and client services and sales. And then while I was at Nielsen, while I was in New York, had the opportunity to meet my wife. And so I was one of those students who didn't get married at BYU-Idaho and maybe felt a little, I don't know, weird that I may have missed my opportunity. But man, New York was a pretty amazing place for single people. And I had the opportunity to date a lot of women who were, quite frankly, out of my league, and my wife being the kind of the greatest of those, and so yeah, I had the opportunity to kind of get married. We had our first 2 kids out there. I was at Nielsen for almost 6.5 years, 7 years. Took a job at Microsoft, which was for me a dream because I'm from the Seattle area originally, and so just had some connections there, and was able to be at the company at a really fun and significant time, and again, living this life that I just in a lot of ways kind of felt like I didn't deserve, or maybe just kind of was an imposter, right? Like, but still trying to do my best to just appreciate it in the moment and make the most of it and try to understand that, God had a purpose for it all.
Yeah, I love that. I think, sometimes students will get an opportunity and kind of have that imposter syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
Just the fear of like, oh, maybe I won't do it,
Right, totally.
So
it's real.
Do you have any advice for someone who might be feeling like that?
Yeah, I think the first thing is just to know that it's real. It happens to everyone. It doesn't matter if you're, and that's the fun thing about my career is I've had the opportunity to kind of connect with some, pretty heavy hitters in industry, both in the media world and the tech space, VPs, in some cases presidents and CEOs. And as I've built some of those relationships, it's just fun to kind of see these people because they're just human. Like they're not really super impressive necessarily. They've just either had opportunities and some of them are impressive, but they all kind of share that same idea of just like, I really don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why it's me and not this other person. The other person seems way more qualified. And so I think that imposter syndrome is just very natural and we just have to kind of own it and recognize it. I think maybe if I don't know if it's the right kind of approach, but if you have to fake it till you make it, I don't think that's a bad thing because I think it provides opportunities to grow and develop. And if you think about this life, I think that's kind of why we're here, right? Is to grow and to develop. And so I would say if anybody's struggling with that, don't wait until you feel like you're fully ready to take that next step because you're probably not going to grow and develop as much as you could if you didn't take it when maybe you had more opportunity to learn. Yeah,
that's true. That's great advice. Thank you.
Yeah.
So as students here, we're kind of in this safe haven. We're kind of in this bubble.
Sure.
But then we graduate and we go out into the world and, I think we still want to stand in holy places and do all those good things, but we're in like a new environment that might not be as holy.
Sure. Yeah.
What advice do you have for students who still want to be disciples and be good examples while still, I guess, being in the world but not of the world.
Yeah, totally. And that was something that, became very apparent when I moved to New York City. And I'm literally moving from Rexburg to New York City. I don't know if there's much bigger kind
Pretty
of
extreme.
change in scenery, right?
Yeah.
I remember, my first week, at work or whatever, they wanted to kind of just go out and do like a happy hour. And, and I was like, okay, like, should I go? Like, am I allowed to go? Like, where do I stand on this? And I hadn't really given it much thought beforehand and kind of found myself in a little bit of a dilemma. And I was lucky enough to be working with another person. The person who I interned for was a member of the church. And so I kind of had him as a mentor, kind of just like, hey, like, is this a bad thing if I go? And he taught me that, you can still keep your covenants in places where other people haven't made covenants, I guess. What I had to learn is that I could still be a good covenant keeping member of the church, doing the things that I knew were true and right for me, without having to maybe sacrifice friendships and relationships that were maybe being built outside of work. And so attending a happy hour, while people were drinking and doing things around me, I learned that, like, I can do my best to be myself there, but not have to obviously kind of give in and do the things that they're doing. But in fact, that I could be respected and admired for, being willing to kind of, be that friend and kind of show whatever it is, kind of that support, but still doing it my way, right? And without having to kind of maybe give in to some of the other vices and things that other people do. And so yeah, I guess I kind of found a way to kind of, stand in holy places, but in my own shoes, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
So you teach a few classes on campus.
Uh-huh.
What do you hope that students get out of your classes? And that might be a broad question.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
I guess just as far as like life goes, like what do you hope they take from your classes?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously the technical skills piece that I'd hope that they would get, and that it's not just me kind of getting preachy and everything. Like I do hope that they recognize that the education that they're getting here is right on par with the education that people are getting. In some cases even better than the education that they're getting at like a Harvard or a Yale or some of these Ivy League schools. And the reason why I say that is not to hate on anybody who's gone to those schools, but to make people aware that when I moved to New York, those were the people who I was working with straight out of college. And it was very intimidating thinking that like, oh man, that person went to Notre Dame, like that person went to UPenn Wharton, like they're going to crush me, right? But when I realized that the things that I had been taught and the skills that I had developed were right on par with theirs, and that in a weird way I kind of had something more. I had a little bit of this. I don't know if it was a chip on my shoulder or just kind of this. I went to school in Idaho insecurity, not the school in Provo insecurity, that made me feel like I needed to kind of really prove myself. But it went a long way. Like it was just kind of having some grit, some determination, a little bit of that good old fashioned work ethic. I'm not a farmer, but since I went to school in Idaho, I can claim some sort of farming work ethic. Maybe I don't know, but that went a long way, and I found myself being promoted, before a lot of those people who had kind of those fancier educations. So that would be one thing, is to not think that your education has less value than anywhere else. I would argue that in some ways it has more. Other kind of life skill things, I mean, I think the big one is just keeping your covenants. And if it sounds simple, but like we see so many people that, kind of struggle, while they're here, when they leave. And I don't know. I think sometimes we just think too hard about, what's right and wrong. But at the end of the day, I think we just need to understand that, hey, if we've made covenants with God, let's understand what those covenants are. And if we really kind of look into them, if we kind of just, study and pray, like it's not super complicated. Like there are so many things that can make, living an active LDS lifestyle complicated that it's unnecessary, right? God, I believe, loves us so much, and it is so is such a fan of who we are and wants us to kind of do, just do our best and wants to reward us so much that that we don't have to overcomplicate things and we can just focus on really just this simple part of I've made a covenant and my job's to keep it. And guess what? Like, God is just as bound as I am in blessing me with opportunities and things that might not be kind of in my mind, but are definitely on the table if I kind of do my part.
Mm-hmm. I like that. That's very hopeful. Well, my last question for you is, how has your experience at BYU-Idaho helped you draw closer to Christ?
Yeah, I think, the big one for me was just developing really good habits and really just kind of having a foundation of kind of knowing who I am as a child of God, as simple as that sounds, and being willing to kind of lean into it. What I love about the BYU-Idaho experience is that I can, have these kind of spiritual, religious conversations in a marketing class or in an economics class. It doesn't have to just be in a religion class, and kind of just getting comfortable with, kind of my own spirituality, I think goes a long way. I think sometimes, it's easy to kind of just maybe look at certain conversations or things as taboo, or we have a lot of pressure from the world that really kind of doesn't maybe prioritize or maybe kind of accept spirituality or religion. And I think just kind of getting comfortable with no, this is who I am. And I'm so proud of that. I'm so excited about that. If it's okay, I'll share just one little other thought. When I was at Microsoft. I remember at Microsoft they have all these different groups that you can join, and you can be, and a lot of them, might be political groups. A lot of them might be, other lifestyle groups. Some of them are just kind of heritage groups and things like that. And I kind of always felt like kind of weird. Well, where's the religion group? Like, why can't I? Where's my group? Right? Like, why can't I have a group? And I realized that I could use my religion to really kind of connect with a lot of these other groups, because at the end of the day, we're all children of God, and we all are trying to do our best and kind of living the best lives that we know. And so for me, I had these opportunities to live my religion openly, and in some ways be protected from others whenever there was a scenario that might, get a little shady or whatever. I remember this one time, it was like my skip level manager was looking. There was a joke that was told, and it was basically, it was on his phone and it had like a bad picture on it. It's like, oh, you got to see this, and I obviously, the people who worked with me kind of knew, kind of what my standards were. And I remember this one of my friends, she just stands up. And again, this is like a skip level person. Like, this is like somebody who holds a lot of weight. And she was like, don't you dare show that to him. You put that away right now. And I was, I was just so grateful that, that I didn't have to say anything. I would be fine saying it. But that, that I guess that the way that I lived was clear enough that there were certain boundaries that were already there that I didn't have to get preachy about, but they were just kind of accepted.
Yeah, that's really cool that you're able to kind of, I guess, get that sort of, I don't know, reputation of like, this is his standards.
Yeah.
And I love that. I am curious if someone hadn't stepped in, what would you have said? Because I feel like that's something that would be hard for me. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't want to be rude, whatever. Like, how would you have approached that?
Yeah. I would probably make some sort of joke, but at the end of the day, just kind of say, hey, I'm not really into it, but thanks, thanks, kind of a thing. But yeah, I mean, there were definitely situations where you do just kind of have to learn how to say no or whatever, and just like, even in some cases, maybe even walk away. But I had a good enough relationship with that person where I was just like, if I said no, I don't think he was going to press. He wasn't drinking at the time, so I don't think it would have gotten, kind of gross or anything. But yeah, sometimes you just have to say it.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been really great.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the BYU-Idaho Disciple Journeys podcast, a production of BYU-Idaho Radio. A special thanks to our guest, Matthew Maroon. Our theme music is by Sophia Pack, and I'm Isabella Salazar. You can listen to more episodes on your favorite podcast app or find us online at byui.edu/radio.